we'll just get right into it here. We got a bunch of fun stuff to talk about. I guess first we get to talk about me. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I work for Pantheon, as Dwayne mentioned, and there's my Twitter and my website if you want to check out more about me or send me a little tweet, comments, stuff like that. First of all, let's see, SEO. What is SEO? SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. It's just process of making a website better for search engines to find what you have on your website. At the agency I used to work at, we used to have an SEO/internet marketing department, and they would do lots of fun stuff about keyword research and writing content and making sure it has all your keywords used in it very well, and that kind of thing, advertising type things using Google AdWords and other advertising platforms. And I'm not really going to talk about that. That's something that we might talk about. You could talk about maybe in another session. But what we're really going to talk about is just as a builder of a site, someone making a site, what can you do to make it easy for these marketing people or just people in general to do things that are friendly for search engines. So as a site builder, we're going to implement these kind of things. I've broken it down to a few different areas that you can set things up within Drupal to help set up SEO type of things with domains, URLs, XML sitemaps, metatags, RDF, and schema. I will touch on a little bit, and then also tracking scripts and kind of other analytics and types of things. So I got a bunch of different kind of modules as well as settings and things that you can turn on within these platforms. And so we'll go through this here. Let's see. First we're talking about domains. That's my web domain, as I mentioned earlier, my website. And one thing I just was highlighting too is that these days you want to have a kind of HTTPS on your website all the time because it's a security thing. And so I'll be talking about security next hour in another room if you want to hear more about that. But anyway, let's see. So one thing that can happen on many sites is you have a bunch of different domain names. You have domain.com or danficker.com or danielficker.com, and you have the www version, the non-www version, the HTTPS version, the non-HTTPS version, and what you really don't want to have is Google and the search engines thinking, oh, hey, these are all different websites that all have the same content. And so one way you can help with that is just to, the default is really just kind of like, you would have what looks like 6 different websites with just a slightly different name, almost all the same content. Exactly the same content, but for search engines like Google, it's better to say, hey, this is the main website, and have everyone else kind of redirect to that. In some cases, if you don't do that, search engines might get a little confused and say, oh, hey, I first saw it on danficker.com, so it must be, that's where this content lives. And then decide that some of your other content is on another website, and it just works better if all of it's on the same website. And so we'll talk about how to do that here. The solution is to use a HTTP 301 response code to redirect and say, hey, this is a permanent redirect to this location. If you're using Apache, Drupal's default htaccess file includes some examples on how you can set that up. On services like Pantheon, where I work, we do have, it used to be we just had a way you could write in your settings.php file some code that would do this redirect. We've just recently introduced a new feature called a primary domain, where we actually redirect it on the platform level that you can set there too. If you look in general in your web developer documentation or web server documentation, you can find how to set up these redirects for all these different domains. Again, the redirects give you a clear message to the search engines that there's one site at this domain, and all the other ones kind of redirect to point to that. And then similarly, we're going to talk about the same type of thing for not your domain names, but everything that comes after the .com or .org or .net. The URL is the part of the page, or is it where you're saying not which server I'm going to, but which page or resource on the website I'm going to. So yeah, your URL is kind of the path information, and then any sort of query string information after the domain. So yeah, the domains direct you to server, the path redirects you to a resource on that server. And just this is some of my opinion, but I think it's a good idea. URLs should make some sense. It should be somewhat readable for customers, even though you probably don't want customers to have to be able to type in a really long URL. But it also can be helpful for search engines if it actually does have the important keywords in the URL. So you maybe don't want the URL just to be, and actually we'll talk about this in some ways. By default, Drupal's default URLs are just /node/ a number, and that's not the best thing in the world. We're going to work on that too. So yeah, URLs should, if there's some hierarchy in the website, maybe the URL should include that information. The URL should have some sort of meaning, understanding. If there is some hierarchy, if you actually just take apart that URL and just go to a page that looks like it's the part of the higher up page, that it should actually get you to something that might be useful, and more of a example. So you should be able to kind of modify the URLs if you want to type something in there. So my example there is if you're at URL/blog/2017/10/sample post. If you go to blog/2017, you probably should see something that was related to blogs in 2017. So if you're going to make it that kind of a hierarchy of blog or of URL information, because those are the URL kind of looks like a folder, and so make sure there actually is something there is one thing I like to say. So let's see, we talk about robots.txt is another part of, let's see, is that where I want to go? Yeah, okay, yeah. Robots.txt is another part of a way you can tell search engines what on your website is useful information and what's maybe not useful information. A default Drupal install includes actually a robots.txt file that says, hey, just kind of ignore these folders that have Drupal's more administrative pages and things that you're not really going to find anything useful in there anyway. It just says, hey, Google and other robots, just don't look at this stuff. It's not important. And then if you want, you have some other parts of the website that are public information, but search engines might get confused by it or might not need to see that information. You can just say, hey, just don't keep a copy of this around. It's not going to be helpful. One thing that's helpful too is on staging or test sites, you can just set a robots.txt file that just says don't index any of this information, and the search engines will say, oh, they don't want me to keep this information, and that is nice. Then if you don't do that on some sort of test sites, then you can somehow find that, hey, my test site is actually competing with my main site, and that's not something good either. So that's a good thing to set up. On Pantheon, we do have dev test environments too, and we do actually put that on there automatically, so you can't get those pages indexed. Only the live site. Now we're getting to some good Drupal settings here. One of the first settings we here have is URL aliases are built into Drupal, and every page in Drupal by default, like I said, has this URL. The default URL is something very basic called node/NID, where the NID is a number, the ID number of that piece of content. And then if you're editing a page by default within Drupal, it asks, do you want to have a URL path? And then you can set the URL alias to whatever you like. If you'd like something a little more readable. If this is a basic website about me, I might just make the URL just something like about. So that's the built-in module or built-in Drupal functionality, but we'll talk about a few more modules to improve URL aliases to do a lot more than that. And the first one here is Pathauto. It requires also the token module to be used because what it basically does is kind of takes other parts of your content and replaces them with these little bracketed pieces of text. So yeah, the token module provides that information. And when you turn on this module, it actually immediately starts setting up a new alias setting, and it's default with this kind of content/node title. So after you turn that on, basically everything will start with, the URL will start with /content/ the name of the page. The node title is something you fill in as the main heading, or the main top level heading of the page. And that can work pretty well. If my page was about me or something, it'd be just content/about-me. And you could customize that further for each content type. Like I was showing earlier, had blog posts with the date and the year and stuff like that, or the month of the year. You could actually set that up to say, hey, the month and the year published, and have it start with blog instead of content. And you can even include lots of other pieces of information in there, assuming you can get it kind of working with this token system that is installable within Drupal. So more about Pathauto module and how it works. It automatically creates paths for taxonomy term pages, or kind of category pages within Drupal, and for user pages as well. It includes the username and the user page. It does a lot of fun stuff. If you put weird characters, emojis, or other things in your titles, that makes for really weird URLs, unless you turn on some options about translating these special characters into more standard URL characters. So that's in the advanced settings of Pathauto to turn that on. All the Pathauto configuration is under the URL aliases section of Drupal's config section. And the main thing you have here is now your URLs are a lot more dynamic, and they're also just populated based on what the title of your page is, or the content of your page is. And so you can just set this up when you start the website, and then all of a sudden, when people create more content, the paths are going to be pretty, a lot more pretty and readable, and better for your search engine because they include keywords that are also in the title. On any page, they could also be kind of overridden by the editor to say, actually, I don't like what is set at the default here. I want to actually change it to something that I think would be even better. On the edit page, it'll just show up there under URL aliases, and you can just change it to whatever you want. Another thing for improving URLs on your website is a module called the redirect module. And what this module does is redirect things for you from within your website. Basically, you can set up a redirect from some URL to another URL. And we'll talk about a few ways that can be useful. One of them actually is automatic. Once you turn on the redirect module, when you change the title of the page, the old URL still works, but it sets a new URL and then creates a redirect between the old URL and the new URL. If I change it from about me to just about in general, then content/about me now redirects to content/about, that type of thing.
Is it better for the search engines to eventually get rid of the redirects?
Sooner or later, within a few days or weeks, the search engines are going to, if they had seen that old page before, will see the redirect and kind of transfer everything that it knows about the old page to the new one. It could be maybe helpful to delete it at some point. Maybe I don't know. I don't see if there's too much of a need for that. Mostly because it could be somebody also just manually created a link somewhere on the internet, and they might never update that. And so it might be helpful to have that redirect there kind of forever. Just because you could also look in. There's certain analytics reports and things within Drupal that will tell you what 404 pages have been happening, and you could delete it, and then if you see it showing up in the 404 page listings, that means somebody's been trying to access that page, and then you could add it back, basically. There are some options within the redirect module to say, these redirects get purged after months or weeks or something. I've never really used that. I suppose if you have a really big website, the redirect table could just get really, really, really huge, and then maybe slow down your website a bit. But it would have to get pretty huge, I think. I don't see too much of a reason to do it, but there could be, I'm sure. You know.
I was thinking it maybe showed up in like Google's Search Console or Google Analytics or something that.
Yeah, it would search. It would show. It would at least show. I know the Google Search Contents, Search Console, and Analytics would both show you like 404 pages and that type of thing. So. Yeah, if somebody was visiting that URL that was no longer redirecting, yeah, you'd see that at least, I think. But yeah, that's a good question. I think it really depends. I, to some extent, don't see too much of a reason to delete it, but it could happen. But let's see, more redirects. Let's talk about that a little bit. Yeah, so when it basically, yeah, when it notices there's a change, it creates a redirect automatically. And then you can also add your own custom redirects. I see customers use this a lot if they want just a really short URL of like a word or a couple letters to use on kind of banners or things. So, you know, you could say mywebsite.com/vote or something if you're having a big kind of, you know, a poll or something like that. And it might redirect to a page that says like vote for the 2019 person of the year or something like that, and that would actually be the full URL, would be something very long and have a lot of really nice keywords in it, but you could create a redirect that just says /vote goes to this actual other page, and that can be really helpful for a lot of reasons. If basically you can kind of just manually create these redirects for any reason you really want, and that can be helpful for yeah, a bunch of reasons there, I think. And the redirect module at some points had some issues with if you started redirecting back to yourself, which is not a good idea because then browsers just start saying, oh, I'm going here, oh, I'm going here, and keep going in a loop forever. The redirect module at least now tries to detect if that's happening a number of times in a row, and then stops itself basically from doing that. It kind of disables at least one of the redirects. And I think it, you know, kind of, if you're logged in as an admin, it might notify you like, hey, there's something weird going on here. And that surprisingly happens pretty often. There was a bug a few years ago where it didn't handle this very well. You just get a redirect loop that never finished. And so it's been nice to have that as a feature. But turns out lots of people like to change the title of the page and then change it back again. So that's how those redirect loops kind of happen. There is another module for Drupal 7 called Global Redirect, and then this does another little, kind of like the 301 redirects do, is kind of just help standardizing on the exact same URL for everything. And I'll talk about this a little bit. In Drupal 8, this actually is included in the redirect module. And I have a little example right here on the next page here. So all these URLs on a hypothetical website, node/1 about-me, about-me with a slash at the end, and for other reasons, index.php, $q equals about-me, whatever. All those actually will get you the same page in a default Drupal install in most cases. But the global redirect module in Drupal 7 actually just, whenever it sees any of these ones, the last four there, it automatically sends a 301 redirect to the top one there. So again, it's another thing like the domain redirects where it actually just tells search engines, this is the one page that has this information. There's not 3 or 4 different versions of it. And this is one of those modules where you just download it and turn it on, and then it's just doing the work for you. So that's what I have about URLs, and then we'll talk about XML sitemaps. Let's see. So there's a few modules, and we'll talk about both of them here, I think. The main module for Drupal 7 is just called XML Sitemap, and there is a version of it for Drupal 8. It's maybe not in the... I've had some issues using it in the past. So there is another Drupal 8 module called like Simple XML Sitemap, But I'll get into that in a minute. So XML Sitemap is a Google and other search engines, like it's basically, this picture actually here shows a little bit, it's basically just a long list of all the pages on your website. And it's in a file that Google and Bing and other places can decide to look at. And the nice thing is the nice thing is once you install this, Drupal just kind of keeps a running list of all the web pages here, and actually will include a little bit more information about like when they actually last were updated and approximately how often they're updated. So if they want to come back to search engines and say, oh hey, did this thing get an update, it can kind of look at that information. So within the sitemap, you can include mostly the content is mostly what you're going to have, but sometimes you have like menu items, which are views, taxonomy terms, which are kind of lists of content, kind of list of categories, and even user profiles are sometimes content. You can add all of those to the search or the XML sitemap file. And again, it's not really a fun page to look at, but your search engines, you can actually submit those. We'll talk about that later, how you can submit those to Google or Bing or whatever other search engines that might want to look at this information and make sure they have all your pages. So otherwise, if you don't include this information, they'll find your homepage because somebody linked to it somewhere and kind of try to find all the links on the website. But it's a lot easier if you just say, hey, here's everything. Have fun. So we'll talk about here. The Google Search Console is a great tool from Google. This is actually what it used to look like. I haven't updated this slide in a while because the new look is definitely a little more kind of Google's newer design kind of thing. But it does, basically through here you verify that your website is owned by you, or you're an administrator of the site, basically. This is the URL to get there, google.com/webmasters will get you there. You just need to verify your site to show them that you are a manager of the website, and then they can send you messages through that system. They'll email you, or there's a message area in there. If they notice something is wrong with the website, Google might just say, hey, by the way, we know something weird going on, you might want to check this out. But there's a lot of other information in there. You can submit your sitemap through there so that they can look at that, but also just information on what people are searching for to get to your website, what pages it sees that there's errors on, and not found errors, other types of server errors, and how much of sometimes even how much like traffic Google is sending to your website. You can kind of control that if Google's getting too aggressive and using all your traffic. You can actually say, hey, can you maybe back off a little bit on that too? So there's a lot of good information there. And that's mostly about that. But now we're going to get into meta tags, are another big part of search engine optimization. And this is part of, like, if you view the source of a page, you actually see towards the top of the page there are these like meta tags that don't actually show up in the actual output of the browser, but they actually show up. They're just shown there for search engines to look at. The title will show up in the title of your tab or your window, but the rest of them are mostly just showing up in various other places. So first of all, talk about the page title. When installing Drupal, you ask it for a site name, and then after that, every page by default is just the title of the content and the title of the page together. And that's actually, it's pretty good. Those are the most important pieces of information about what is on this page. Is the title is it's about me, and the website is it's my website. So those are two important informations. But we can, again, using some Drupal tools, customize this a lot more if we want. And we'll talk about a number of ways to do that. The best or the most commonly used Drupal module for this is the Metatag module. In Drupal 7, there is a few different modules to use this. If you're building a new site, though, definitely recommend using Metatag module. like the Pathauto module, it allows you to use this token system to, you don't have to actually, with other Metatag modules in Drupal 7, it actually wants you to kind of set the value of the meta tag. The token system basically says, oh, you've already got this information in other fields, and I'll just use that unless you want to set something else more specific. So if you already have, by default, it kind of uses the page title, uses the body of the text and stuff like that as those defaults. But you can also override those to do whatever you want with the token system too. So yeah, the meta tags that are most common: page title, the description, the keywords, the canonical URL is another way of telling search engines, like, this is the official URL. We talked about other ways to do that earlier, but this is another just meta tag that says you should be looking at this URL, even if you got here with a slightly different version. The robots meta tag also lets you, in the meta tag data of a page, also give you some information about, like, this page shouldn't be indexed, or this page shouldn't be considered, a page that search engines should use, or something like that. There's a number of different options there. There's many more as well. There's some sub-modules for the Metatag module that include things for, like, Facebook, Open Graph, Twitter cards, that type of thing. And you can, again, use the same type of token system to populate that information as well. So this is an example of the Metatag edit area. It's in one of these tabs. It shows up either at the bottom or on the side, and it will basically, those bracketed areas are those little tokens that say these are the defaults of what will happen. If you don't change any of these, then it will just take the site name and the site and the content title and just fill those in. The summary of the description field, that type of thing, it will just fill those in. But if you want to, you can also just remove all that or add to it by just typing in whatever you want. And so that you can put more keywords in there. As a site builder, like, most of the stuff works really well, and then the internet marketing team can come in and change all these to their heart's content, that's what they want to do. Let's see. Here's another fun one for meta tags and that type of thing. There's a module called Yoast SEO. If you've used WordPress, you might have installed the Yoast module, and this one actually kind of on your edit page actually includes a fun little preview of what it thinks search engines might show as your kind of title, description, URL, that type of thing, and give you some ideas of how you might be able to search or improve search engine optimization. So on the right side there's a little screenshot that says, like, hey, maybe you want to use these certain keywords more often. You might want to improve a few other parts of your content there. So that can be a helpful little module to install and turn on, and give some immediate feedback to your content editors there as well. Let's see. I'm going to keep going here, just in case. I don't know. Well, yeah, we have a little more time here. That's good. So we'll just touch a little bit on here what RDF and schema.org is. And that's basically kind of data that is embedded within the web page to give you even more information. RDF is a open W3C standard, which means that the people who make HTML or kind of decide on the standard for HTML are the people who have also kind of built this. And basically, yeah, it adds computer readable information throughout the web page. If you have a phone number, a location, a job posting, various other things that are common bits of data. In general, on a web page, it just is generally just a human readable piece of information. But for the computers to fully understand it and parse it, it'd be nice to have it in a more computer readable format. And so that's what this does, is basically inside the HTML tags of this information, you put some extra formatting in there that the computer says, oh, I know what that is. That's a job listing, and here's all the little pieces of information about this job listing. And then that can be very helpful for not only having the information on your website, but maybe even have references to that information somewhere else on the internet that can be searchable in other ways. And so, yeah, you don't really see it on the front of the page, but if you look at the source of the page or in some sort of RDF schema formatting thing or something like that, you could actually see, like, oh yes, this is actually formatted in a way that this website will see it. Very similarly, there is a service called schema.org, which is built more by Google and some other companies, and it's kind of a variation on the RDF kind of formatting system. It can be a little easier to implement, and that's what most people use, I think, at this point. For Drupal 7, there's a module called schema.org, and you can basically, in your content type, actually say, like, this is a piece of content of this type, and actually kind of format all those fields in a way that are more readable. It does take a little bit of work to get this working, just because it's not something that's fully built into Drupal 7. In Drupal 8, it actually is more built into the RDF module that is within Drupal 8 Core to actually put out these formatting pieces. Sometimes I've noticed also these formatting things can confuse website code validator systems, so that's something you have to decide. Like the HTML spec doesn't is sometimes the W3C validator thing says, like, this isn't really HTML, this is some sort of non-standard tag, and it's still not going to break your website, but it might give you some more errors sometimes like that. But so sometimes people just turn it off because they don't want to see that, and so it really depends on how much you really want to use this. I know I've had a couple customers at my old job at an agency saying, like, I want my job to show up on those job listings thing that Google has, just so it shows up in more places. And so we did actually spend a bit of time implementing the schema.org code in the page. The schema.org website has a few ways to do it. You could actually put just some JSON on the top of the page, which some people do, or you can kind of put it within the formatting of the rest of the page. And sometimes that works easier than others, depending. You might have to kind of tweak some templates here and there. So it's not always an easy thing to just turn on and automatically work. But and if you are using Drupal 8, like I said, most of it's in the Drupal 8 module, but then there is an RDF UI module that allows you to further customize it within the UI of Drupal 8 instead of within the code. So that's all I have about that, but we'll talk a little bit about tracking scripts as well. A very popular tool that is free and almost everyone uses is Google Analytics. Google Analytics is something that Google provides and hosts. It integrates very well with Google's advertising AdWords system as well. If you download this Drupal Google Analytics module, then all you need to do is get this 6 or 8 digit tracking ID for your website and stick it in the Google module or the Drupal module. On the Drupal module, will just on every page of your website put in this block of code that allows Google to do its JavaScript thing and pick up all the information about who's visiting your website, where they're visiting from, and you can then look through all that data on Google Analytics' website. The Google Analytics module also provides some extra things that you could do, like tracking download links, tracking links to external websites. You can also disable it to not track what your admins are doing or that type of thing too. So it gives you a bunch more options than just sticking the code in there, which is kind of nice. Let's see, is that what I wanted to get? Okay. So the tracking code module is a Drupal 7 module that I've used on some sites. Sometimes the internet marketing team want to add these sort of Google site verification codes and things. So when Google Search Console says we need you to verify that you're the owner of the site, there's a few ways to do that. You could add a DNS record, you could add a meta tag, you could add a file on the server. And so this tracking code module within Drupal 7 will give you a way to do that. There are a few other ways to do that too. You could actually just upload this certain file that Google is looking for. You could actually just, in your templates, stick a meta tag in there, that type of thing. So this is one way to do it that's kind of handy. I personally like the not doing a sort of a meta tag or something like that because it actually, adds a a kilobyte or two, or not just, a few lines of code that only Google ever really needs to see, and your customers don't need to really download. So I like when Google says, hey, you could just put a file on the server here, and we'll look for that file. If you're not at Google, then you're not looking at that file, you're not downloading it, so it's not adding extra junk to the code of your page. But yeah, so in Drupal 8, there is a module called Asset Injector, or there's a few other ways to do this type of thing. But if you can, maybe just as the web developer, just put it in there, and then you don't have to worry about it. But these are some tools for just making it so you can actually inject that information into the UI of Drupal and not have to actually edit some code there once you put the module in there. So yeah, and there's other tools like Google Tag Manager is another tool that Google provides for free, where you can actually just put in one little block that says Google or load Google Tag Manager, and then within Google Tag Manager you can also say like load Google Analytics, go load this piece of JavaScript I just wrote, load this tracking script from this advertising company we're using, and that type of thing. So you can kind of offload all of it to Google Tag Manager if you want as well. And they give some pretty cool tools to do that. You can kind of like, I think kind of set up things to be deployed to the Tag Manager later and that type of thing. So, and another thing is I talked about verifying the website earlier too. There is a module for Drupal 7 again called Site Verify. I don't know how many people are using Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 these days, but I know there's a lot of both. Yeah, so this is a very similar way to say in Drupal 7, like, here's this verification file that we need, and here's how to add it to the website. And then, or you could use Metatag, that type of thing. Yeah, so there's a few ways to do that kind of thing. Tracking codes, yeah. See, tracking codes, I suppose, are more about just little snippets of JavaScript on different pages to kind of, if you have this kind of landing page and you want to like track, did these people actually come to the landing page from our advertising system, that's where you put a tracking code. The verification code is very similar, but a little bit different because it's kind of doing that verification with Google Analytics or some other services or Google Site Search Console and that type of thing. Like, which site are you wanting to manage, and are you actually an owner of that website? You can prove, like, yes, I can actually change code on this website, or I actually own the DNS. So, therefore, you should be able to let me kind of manage settings for this website. And I think that's actually all I have for today. And we've got a little bit of time for questions, so that's good. Anybody have a question? I guess I went pretty fast through all that, but. Anybody? Questions? No?
I have some.
Okay, yes, you have a question. Sorry.
How do you set up that Google Twitter card?
So, yeah, you download and install the Metatag module,
Yeah.
and there is kind of the main module set up there, but you'd also then, there is a sub-module that's another piece of the module that says Metatag Twitter cards, and it would give you a bunch more of those fields to kind of edit it within there. And I don't know all the details, but I think within a Twitter card there's usually a title and an image and like a little snippet of text. And so you could then use that kind of token system within there to say, like, the title should be the same as the page title, the snippet should be like the same as the summary title, and the image, and that probably would do that mostly by default. The image would be like an image field from the page or something like that. And there's a couple different styles of Twitter cards, I think. One has a bigger image, one has a smaller image. So you might be able to decide, I think, in that, like, how that works. But
I have heard of the Open Graph.
Open Graph is, well, most of what Facebook wants to put on their website, they do something very similar, whereas if you share a link on Facebook, it will use, find an image from your website, or from the page. It'll also take the title and some other stuff. But using the Open Graph tags, Open Graph is kind of Facebook's kind of open web standard. The open graph tags, you can say actually, no, actually the title should be this for Facebook, and the snippet and the image should be this, and that type of thing. So it's another way to kind of customize when you share something on Facebook, kind of like the Twitter cards, but when you share something that, like what shows up there. By default it usually is maybe just the logo of your website or an image at the top of the page, but you can kind of pick that further. So,
Okay, thanks.
yeah. Anybody else have a question? But I hope you found this helpful anyway. So, thanks.